Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for another entry into the opening paragraphs playlist here on the channel. But this is a video which will also appear in the playlist for the read-along of A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce. If you've watched those videos here on the channel, you understand that A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man is a novel which holds a strange place in my heart. A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man is an extremely consequential novel of the English language. But it's also a very difficult one. It is one which challenges you from beginning to end, and I mean that, beginning to end, with what it means to be inside the mind of another person. Being inside the mind of another person is quite possibly the entire meaning of literature. As literature is, to me, what literature does best, what literature is best equipped to do for society, insofar as it is not just writing and storytelling. Literature allows us to empathize with an individual that we have never met, not sympathize. The best literature puts us inside another character, inside another person, to experience the things that that person experiences. Here with A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, that comes to the forefront of the reading experience for Joyce's novel. So we're going to get into it with the opening paragraph of this novel. And the first paragraph reads as such. Once upon a time, and a very good time it was, there was a moo cow coming down along the road, and this moo cow that was coming down along the road met a nice little boy named Baby Tuckoo. The first thing that should stand out about this opening paragraph to A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce is, holy shit. What in the high hell is going on? What in the blue hell have I gotten myself into? What in the hell is happening on the page? What is going on here? It's disorienting. It's meant to be. Why? The entire novel of A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce is stream of consciousness, is very standoffish to a reader, I think. And it begins right here with the opening paragraph of the text. It is meant to be abrasive. It is meant to take you aback. It is meant also to be oddly familiar. Familiar how? Once upon a time, is also meant to be welcoming. How? Once upon a time, and a very good time it was. So there is this dichotomy within this very first paragraph. And I'm going to repeat it again. I think I'm probably going to get this quote into every video here on the opening paragraph playlist here on the channel. Neil Gaiman tells us that a second draft is to make it look like we knew what we were doing all along. The dichotomy here between being standoffish and off-putting and being very welcoming. Being very, come here, read this. It's all here. That is all in this novel. It's in this novel from beginning to end. The moment you get to know these characters, you live inside the skin of these characters. And yeah, that's very welcoming as a reader. But there's a lot of unwelcoming parts to this novel, including the latter parts of this novel. I think it's chapter 5 itself, it's almost written in a way to dare you to quit. Much in the same way that our protagonist is dared to quit his pursuits of education. Another thing that we know is going on here is we get a baby boy, or a boy named Baby Tuckoo. So we know immediately we're going to be dealing with family. You don't have a baby without having other members of the family. Otherwise, that's a baby that doesn't last very long. When you are forced into a family immediately in a novel, what you're going to do is you're going to have to judge that family against the palette of your own family. The family presented to us in A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce is a difficult family. A family that is working class. A family that is working class and very difficult is, strangely enough, very run-of-the-mill. While and whereas we might not exist in this family, we probably do exist in a family that has some components comparable to it. The father in this novel is very difficult. The father in this novel is very abrasive. Maybe you don't have an abrasive father, but there's probably somebody in your family that grinds your gears. There is a lot to do with the individual in this novel who is trying to get out on his own. There's a lot to do with that with which you will probably identify. That is very, very, come here, that is very, very welcoming to the reader. In fact, one of the pursuits of our protagonist is very literary. Funny, we should find that inside a novel being presented to readers who are going to identify with it, huh? It's a sneaky trick. It's a cheap trick. Using a protagonist that's a writer is a cheap trick, but one that Joyce gets away with. We have a very close psychic distance here, and we understand that because we're getting someone's personal story. A little baby boy named Baby Taku. Nobody's named Baby Taku. There's no such thing as a moo cow. It's a cow that moos. It's a baby named something, but not Taku. So we've got a very close psychic distance. We understand that we're going to be dealing one-on-one with someone and very close to their experiences. And we have a tone, the tone of a storyteller. Once upon a time. Once upon a time. Again, you don't accidentally open a modern novel with the phrase once upon a time, do you? You do it for very specific reasons. Another thing that we understand here is pace. The pace is very clippy. It's very clippy early in the novel, not so much later in the novel. We don't know that at the onset of the novel. We just know the clippy pace. We understand that because we have here in the opening paragraph 3 lines, the next paragraph 2 lines, the following paragraph 2 lines, and then 1 line, 1 line, 1 line, 1 line. 2 lines, 2 lines. On and on and on. Very clippy pace. But what that does early in the novel is it drags us in because we're covering a lot of space on the page with very few words. We're just tracking down the page, tracking down the next page. And it allows us as a reader to get lost in the words. By the time you get 3 or 4 pages into this novel, you won't remember how it started. And that's a neat trick by Joyce because of what it accomplishes. Our protagonist would not remember that either, our protagonist being so young. The last thing I want to talk about is the diction here. Moo cow. Moo cow. Look, here's what it tells us. Our narrator does not care about our needs as a reader. Our narrator does not care whether or not we are able to follow along. Nison's little boy, he doesn't care whether or not we are able to follow along. He only cares about his position as a storyteller. If you grant the storyteller all of the freedom that he or she needs when reading a book, what you will eventually be able to do is go back and make sense of the things that you could not make sense of at the time. Go back and make sense of things that were completely nonsensical when they were very first read. Again, this is the faith that you're putting into a writer to make it look like he or she knew what he or she was doing the entire time upon completing that second draft. That is all I have for this episode here on the channel. But I have new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here on the channel. Mondays are for poetry. I also have new videos Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on my personal channel, a link to which can be found in the description below.